Hello. So, in today's lesson, we are looking at Mary, Queen of Scots, and why was she executed in 1587. There'll be two parts to our learning objective. We're going to look at why did the Babington plot fail. We looked already at the Ridolfi plot. We've looked at the Throckmorton plot. It's the final plot we're looking at here. Why did this one not work as well? And what were the consequences of the Babington plot as well? Now, as always, please make sure you've got your worksheet open in front of you from Google Classrooms to fill in as we're going along. Make sure when you've completed that worksheet, you press submit. Don't just leave it there because your teacher won't see it. Deadline for this work is Sunday the 21st of June at 5 p.m. And any questions or feedback you have, please contact me, gbrown@stopsleyhighschool.co.uk. Okay, so quick recap first of all, the Throckmorton plot. Just have a look at those four questions. Who would invade England? Who would help? What would happen to Elizabeth? And what would happen to Mary? Just have a quick think. What can you remember from the previous lesson? Okay. Well, hopefully you've remembered some details here. First of all, who would invade England? The French Duke of Guise, a relation of Mary, Queen of Scots, and he would invade with an army. King Philip II of Spain would pay for that army. We're seeing France and Spain working together. And the Pope gave his blessing. The Catholic Pope said Protestant Elizabeth had to go. He encouraged people to get rid of her. What would happen to Elizabeth then? Well, she'd lose her throne and quite possibly be killed as well. What would happen to Mary, Queen of Scots? She would take the throne. She would be a Catholic Queen of England. It's what all the Catholics want. Now, the reason we started off with this, because if you can remember the Throckmorton plot and what was going to happen, then you can pretty much remember the Babington plot as well. Look at that. Hardly any difference at all. Anthony Babington was an English Catholic. And in 1586, he felt it was his duty to protect Mary, Queen of Scots, to release her. And so he started to organise a plot that included, again, the French Duke of Guise with 60,000 men. Again, Philip II would help fund this plot. He would pay for the army, he'd pay for the troops. The Pope would give it his blessing, and Elizabeth would be overthrown, and Mary would be the Catholic Queen of England. Same as before. So what happened? Well, Anthony Babington was someone who had links to the French and the Duke of Guise. So he was able to communicate with them. And he was encouraged by Catholics to free Mary, Queen of Scots, to use that link, to use those powers that he had. And they said, look, you could do this. You could be the person. It's your duty to free Mary, Queen of Scots. And so he wrote to Mary in 1586, after he met with her once. And he discussed the plot. He discussed his plan, how he was going to release Mary. Now, they both wrote in a secret Catholic code that you can see here on the screen. It's not even letters replacing letters, it's symbols. Symbols are also used not just for letters, but also for key phrases, such as the Queen of England is replaced just by one symbol. They thought they would be writing top secret, no one would understand. Even if someone was to receive that letter, they wouldn't know what it said. And the letters were hidden in beer barrels that were brought to the castle. So what would happen was, Babington would write a letter. He would talk to the person who was delivering beer. Now that might seem a bit strange, but back then you must remember, Tudor times, drinking water was disgusting. It was disease. People often drank beer instead. It was healthier because you're boiling the water. So Babington would write down his note. He would write down what he wanted Mary to read. It would then be rolled up, be placed in a leather pouch, keep it watertight, and it would be placed in the bung of the barrel, as you can see that where the arrow is indicating. So it would be kept absolutely safe. You would pop that into the bung of the barrel, pop the cork in, and then it would be safe, and Mary would come out the other end, take the cork out, and she would be able to undo the pouch and take the letter out and read it. And no one would know what was going on. So now they can work in secret. No one knows, top secret, it's all in code. And the letters, what did they say? Well, Babington wrote, For the dispatch of the usurper basically means to get rid of Elizabeth. The usurper basically means the person who shouldn't be there. So we're going to dispatch, we're going to get rid of her. For the dispatch of the usurper, there will be 6 noble gentlemen, all my private friends, who will undertake that tragical execution. So he's saying there to Mary, look, I've got a plan if you're interested. Me and my friends, 6 other friends, we are going to get rid of Elizabeth and we'll put you on the throne. How does that sound? Are you up for it? Now, how would Mary respond to this offer? This is a test for her. Because if she's loyal to her cousin, she will say, I'm not interested. Don't kill my cousin. Okay? She's kept me in prison, but she's looked after me. But Mary did not directly say that she approved of getting rid of Elizabeth. She didn't say, yes, kill her straight away. But she wrote a letter back saying that Babington would need help from abroad to succeed and that he should get rid of Elizabeth before freeing her. Now, Mary, Queen of Scots, at this point had nearly been a prisoner for 20 years in castles under Elizabeth, and she was desperate to get out. She was desperate to be free. You've got to try and understand that mindset. And so it looks like this is finally her opportunity. However, here's the thing. Sir Francis Walsingham was looking for evidence to have Mary, Queen of Scots, killed. If you remember in the Throckmorton plot, he was looking for evidence in letters and he was frustrated that he couldn't find enough evidence to show that Mary wanted Elizabeth killed. Now, he was keeping an eye on Catholics such as Babington, who he felt could cause trouble. Walsingham had looked at Babington and gone, you're a Catholic. You've got links to the French, who we're enemies with. You've got links to the Duke of Guise. You could be talking to them. I'm going to have a spy watch you. And he had spies all across England. Walsingham has a network of spies. He's monitoring anyone he thinks could be an enemy to Elizabeth. He's a very hard-working, very clever man. And what he did was he told one of his spies to befriend Anthony Babington and tell him to plot to free Mary, to encourage Babington to take part in his plot. Walsingham wanted to know if Babington could be trusted, and he would say, I'm not going to get rid of Elizabeth, I'm not interested in your Catholic plot, in which case, brilliant, we can trust Babington. Or if he'd say, actually, yes, we could put Mary, Queen of Scots on the throne, in which case he was an enemy. Babington was being played along and he didn't realise it. Even the person delivering beer into Mary, Queen of Scots Castle was a spy, was working for Walsingham. Babington didn't have a clue at all. He thought he was working with genuine Catholics, but they weren't. They were Protestant spies. They were people that Walsingham was paying. They're almost like actors. And so what they were double agents, which is where someone who pretends to be working for someone, but is really working for someone else. So an example of this might be, you pretend to help friend A on their project, you actually make it much worse, so the project of friend B, who you were really working with, seems better. That's what was going on here. There were double agents, people who pretended that they wanted Babington to get rid of the Catholic, get rid of Elizabeth, and put Catholic Mary on the throne, but actually they were Protestants. They were working for Walsingham all along. Double agents. And actually, also we could use this term as well, agent provocateurs, which is where a spy encourages someone to break the law so they can be caught, so there's evidence. So an example here might be that the police suspect that your friends are thieves. They ask you to encourage your friends to steal from the shop, and when they do, because you've encouraged them, they can then arrest them. Well, here we've got agent provocateurs as well, because these were people pretending to be Catholics, telling Babington, encouraging Babington to come up with a plot to see what he would do. And Babington falls for this straight away. He comes up with this plot to free Mary, Queen of Scots. And all the time, the spies are watching. They'd fallen straight into the trap Walsingham had set for them, both Babington and Mary. And the letters were always copied and given to a codebreaker called Thomas Phillips. So what happened was the beer barrels would arrive with the letter in, and then the letter would be taken out. It would be opened very carefully because there would be a seal, a wax seal on the envelope, but they knew how to not break that seal. Then the spy would just write down what was said. They would copy that letter out word for word, and then they would seal it back up. They've got a copy of the letter. It goes back in the beer barrel. Mary looks for the letter. She takes the letter out. She doesn't know what's going on at all. She doesn't know that letter has already been read by someone. Now, it wasn't a code. It wasn't a Catholic code, of course. But we've also got, Walsingham has planned for this, because Walsingham has got code breakers in England. One of the ones he used was a chap called Thomas Phillips, who basically was able to crack the codes, and he was able to work out that Mary was writing to say that she basically said, yes, get rid of Elizabeth. She was giving advice to the plotters on how to do it. Thomas Phillips is so sure that this evidence will get Mary, Queen of Scots, killed that he draws a little gallows like you can see here, saying she's going to be hung, we're going to kill her. The spies report all of Babington's actions to Walsingham. He knows exactly what's going on. He knows what letters are being written. He knows when they're being delivered. He knows what Walsingham's planning. Walsingham has read the letters. He's copied them down for evidence for when this goes to courts. So he can prove, he's got evidence Mary, Queen of Scots, wants Elizabeth dead. But this is the clever bit. As soon as that letter is received by Mary saying, look, you're going to need to get help from abroad. You might need to remove me and put me back on the phone after you've got rid of Elizabeth. Walsingham doesn't just go, brilliant, we've got them. He says, hang on, this is getting good. Let's see what else they're going to say. He lets the plot build up so he can find out about the other Catholics. Do you remember Babington said, me and 6 other gentlemen? Well, Walsingham wanted to find out who these gentlemen were. And he wanted them to be killed as well. So he said to Thomas Phillips, look, on that letter to Mary, Queen of Scots, I want you to write, underneath Mary's response, I want you to write down in Mary's handwriting in the code, can you give me details of the 6 gentlemen who are planning to rescue me? So he does that. The letter's sealed back up. Babington receives the letter. He thinks it's all from Mary, Queen of Scots. He doesn't realise that it's been read already. So he goes, well, Mary wants to know more about the people I'm working with. So he gives the names, he gives the details down. Fantastic idea by Walsingham, because now he's got evidence of who else is involved in the plots. So now he doesn't just get rid of Babington and Mary, Queen of Scots, but 6 other potential traitors straight away. September 1586. Everyone who's involved in a plot was arrested and sentenced to death after being hung, drawn and quartered. If you remember, this was where you were hung until you were nearly dead. Then you were cut down the front of an audience and you were cut open whilst you were still alive. And then your body parts were cut off. So you had your legs and your arms and your head. They would be put on spikes and they'd be on display to show people what would happen if you were a traitor to the monarch. That happened to the plotters, but not to Mary, Queen of Scots. So task 1, can you explain to me why the Babington plot failed? Who knew what was going on? What actions were taking in place? Think about the letters being read. Why did the code not work? The light green slides will help you here. Pause the video, fill in that worksheet, and then press play to continue. Okay, so why was this plot important? Well, first of all, it showed Elizabeth was still not safe. We've seen Revolt of the Northern Earls. We have seen the Ridolfi plot, the Throckmorton plot. Now we've got the Babington plot. Catholics are trying to get rid of Elizabeth. And it shows how important Walsingham was, because if his spies hadn't have been there, then who knows what might have happened. Imagine if Walsingham didn't know what was going on and that plot had been allowed to grow and develop. Elizabeth's government realised that the Catholics were going to be a problem. They had tried to ignore the Catholics. They had tried to turn a blind eye. They didn't care in 1559 if the Catholics went to church or not. But now they were going to have to be more harsh. There were mass arrests of recusants, people who refused to go to the church services. 300 in North London alone. 31 Catholic priests were executed. And Elizabeth reluctantly signs the death warrants for Mary, Queen of Scots, after 4 months. Everyone else, hungered and quartered, got out of the way. But the Privy Council, Elizabeth's advisors, for 4 months said, Mary, Queen of Scots is guilty. We've got the evidence. The court have found her guilty. She needs to be executed. She needs to be killed. And Elizabeth, still, we remember, she couldn't make her mind up about things. It's her cousin. She felt people didn't have the right to kill monarchs. And so she refused to sign it. And then she signed it and then didn't hand it over so the order could be carried out. And in the end, Walsingham and another man called Davidson had to take the death warrants away from Elizabeth and another pile of papers, and they had to make sure that the court had it so they could order the execution. And when Elizabeth found out about this, she was furious. She said, I didn't realise I'd signed that bit of paper for the execution. I didn't mean for her to be killed. I wasn't really going to have it happen. She didn't talk to Walsingham for a month. Bear in mind, it's a guy who's been paid to look after her. She threw a slipper at Walsingham and refused to talk to him for a month. Davidson she locked up in the Tower of London for a bit. But this was typical of Elizabeth. She was a brilliant monarch, but actually she was reluctant. She was looking to blame other people. She often couldn't make her mind up about big decisions. But it was no use. She'd signed the death warrant and it was going through. Mary, Queen of Scots, was going to be executed. And now there was no Catholic heir in England for Elizabeth to worry about. Okay? Especially as at this time England were at war with Spain. There was a fear that Spain could invade England and put a Catholic royal on the throne. They cannot do that now. Mary, Queen of Scots was the only one. Once you've got rid of Mary, Queen of Scots, there is no other English person or Scottish person that you can put on the throne. There's no other leading Catholic. So Elizabeth is trying to save herself here. And that's why we don't see any other plots. That's why we see this is the last one. We've seen the Ridolfi plot, the Throckmorton plot, the Babington plot, all trying to put Mary, Queen of Scots on the throne. A plot by Catholics to save their religion. Once Mary, Queen of Scots is dead, that doesn't happen anymore. So have a look at this task 2. The Babington plot led to Elizabeth being more harsh or tough towards Catholics in her country. Can you write me a paragraph that explains it either agrees or disagrees with this statement? It's up to you. But bring in evidence to help you explain your answer. So have a look. Think about what new actions were being taken against Catholics now. What was now happening to Mary, Queen of Scots, which hadn't happened before? Have a think about that one. Again, you might need to go back to the light green slides to help you. Pause the video here and then press play to continue. So, why is the Babington plot so important? Well, like we said, in England, once Mary had died, there was no Catholic heir to replace Elizabeth with. Therefore, the threat to Elizabeth was reduced in England. The English stopped trying to overthrow Elizabeth because there was no one to replace her with. But in Catholic countries, like Spain, like France, for example, there was an outrage that the Protestants had killed the monarch, someone chosen by God. Now, Philip II was already planning an army to invade England. He'd been planning it for a number of years because they were at war with England. Planning an army would take time. He's got to build the boats and so on and make sure his troops are prepared. But the execution of Mary meant that he could no longer invade and put Mary on the throne. Philip was more determined to succeed than ever before. Mary, Queen of Scots, had said, if I die, I want Philip II to be the leader of England instead. I want him to replace me. He was make sure he wanted England now. He continues to build boats ready to set sail, and we'll look at that Spanish invasion very soon. Task 3. Explain why Mary, Queen of Scots was executed in 1587. Again, let's try and use evidence to help us here. Think about what Catholics had been plotting for years now. What had they tried to organise because of Mary being in England? Because in England and abroad, Spain and France, what had they tried to do? Where's your evidence for this? What had Mary shown she was prepared to do by writing to Babington, encouraging him with this plot? Could she be kept alive in England any longer? Have a think about this one, quite tricky. Why was Mary Queen of Scots executed in 1587? Pink slides might help you here, and you might want some previous knowledge as well that you know from the other plots. Pause the video here and then press play to continue. Okay, so we have got then, why was this so important? Mary had said that if she died, she wanted Philip II to take the English throne. So there's an incentive there for him as well. Philip II now could become King of England if he gets rid of Elizabeth. What happened with Mary's execution? Well, she secretly wore red. She decided she was going to die as a Catholic symbol. Red was often seen as a symbol of Catholicism. So she's wearing a black gown. She turns up for the execution. She takes off this black gown and she's wearing this red dress. Huge red dress there. The executioner normally would cut the head off straight away. But this was a new executioner that Walsingham had requested, and he does a botched job. I don't want to get too graphic, but it takes a good few attempts to get rid of her head. The executioner, like always, would lift up the dead person's hair afterwards and show the face to the crowd and say, "Behold, the head of a traitor." This time is almost ludicrous because Mary had been wearing a wig. So the executioner goes to pick up Mary's hair. He's just left holding a wig instead. The head just drops down straight away and rolls off the stage where she'd been executed. There's rumours, how much you want to believe these two. First of all, that her dog was hidden under the dress, a Skye Terrier, and it just ran away. There are also rumours that her lips kept moving after she had died for up to 15 minutes. Again, how much of those two things you want to believe is up to you, but the other ones are true, they did happen. But here's a final thing to end this lesson with. Did Mary win overall? Mary didn't become Queen of England like she'd wanted to. But when Elizabeth died in 1603, Mary's son, James VI of Scotland, did become James I of England. So she didn't become Queen of England, but her son did. Her family does become the leaders of England, the royal family of England, because Elizabeth never has any children. So the Tudor family dies out when Elizabeth goes. Mary, Queen of Scots family, takes to the throne. It's just not Mary herself. It's James I. He's the one who Guy Fawkes tries to blow up. And that means today's monarchs are related to Mary, Queen of Scots. If you go back, I think it's something like the Queen today is great times 11 granddaughter. So great granddaughter of Mary, Queen of Scots. So although she doesn't take to the throne, her family ends up doing so. Now, hopefully that was interesting today. You've got your 3 tasks completed on your worksheet from Google Classrooms. Please make sure you submit that worksheet by Sunday the 21st of June at 5 p.m. As always, any questions or any queries you might have, feel free to contact me, gbrown@slopseyhighschool.co.uk. And all that remains for me to say is, as always, guys, look after yourself, get some exercise, get some fresh air, and I will see you soon. Thank you for today's lesson. Take care. Bye-bye.